We want to take you now to the White House, where President Biden is handing out the Medal of Freedom to 4 Vietnam veterans. Let's listen in.
I quite frankly think being president is inadequate because there's so many brave women and men in here, and so many people we're honoring today. Mr. Secretary, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, senior military officers, thank you all for being here. Yesterday marked the 246th anniversary of this nation's independence. 246 years of struggle and sacrifice to uphold the principles so dear to the character of our nation: liberty, democracy, God-given rights of every individual. It's a journey that has never finished, and it never will be fully finished. It's a work that requires us to look ahead to the future we want to build, and to look carefully at our past, to understand fully where we've come from. For each of those 246 years, American patriots have answered our nation's call to military service. They stood in the way of danger, risked everything, literally everything, to defend our nation and our values. However, not every service member has received the full recognition they deserve. Today, we're setting the record straight. We're upgrading the awards of 4 soldiers who performed acts of incredible heroism during the Vietnam conflict, to respect the conspicuous gallantry and the intrepid ability of their service. I mean, it's just astounding when you hear what each of them have done. They went far above and beyond the call of duty. It's a phrase always used, but it takes on life when you see these men. To the late Staff Sergeant Edward M. Kaneshiro, to Specialist 5 Dwight W. Birdwell, to Specialist 5 Dennis M. Fuji, and to Major John Duffy. I'm proud to finally award our highest military recognition, the Medal of Honor, to each of you, one posthumously. It has been a long journey to this day for those heroes and their families, and more than 50 years have passed, 50 years since the jungles of Vietnam, where as young men these soldiers first proved their mettle. But time has not diminished their astonishing bravery, their selflessness in putting the lives of others ahead of their own, and the gratitude that we as a nation owe them. December 1, 1966, Staff Sergeant Kaneshiro was an infantry squad leader. His platoon was navigating toward what seemed to be a peaceful village. It was an ambush. A vastly superior force of North Vietnamese troops was concealed within the village, protected by fortified bunkers, underground tunnels, and a big trench that ran through the entire village. As Staff Sergeant Kaneshiro led his squad to the east of the village, 2 other squads headed straight in, where the enemy opened fire on them with machine guns and small arms fire, killing the platoon leader, the point man, and pinning down 2 squads. Hearing the battle unfold, Staff Sergeant Kaneshiro moved his squad toward the sound of the firing, where he quickly jumped into action. The machine gun fire suppressing his platoon mates was coming from a big trench. It had to be stopped. He ordered his men to take cover, and then he advanced alone toward the enemy position, armed with 6 grenades and his M16. Laying flat on the ground, Staff Sergeant Kaneshiro hurled his first grenade. It sailed directly through the aperture of the bunker, taking out the machine gunner in the first throw. He then jumped into the trench alone, moved along the trench for 35 meters, clearing the enemy as he went. As his head would emerge above the trench, as he yelled, "Grenade!" Then his platoon would lose sight of him and hear it explode. By the time he was done, the 2 other squads were able to stand up, collect their dead and injured, and recognize and reorganize the fight, and successfully withdraw from the village. According to the eyewitnesses' account of the battle from Staff Sergeant Haskett, Kaneshiro's bravery in single-handedly clearing the trench averted what might have been, quote, a disaster for the whole platoon. Born and raised in Hawaii, the son of Japanese immigrants, a proud husband and father of 4, Staff Sergeant Kaneshiro continued his service with his unit in Vietnam until he was killed in action by hostile gunfire on March 6, 1967. Today, his memory lives on in the lives he saved, in the legend of his fearlessness, and in the hearts of the family he left behind. John, Naomi, Tom, thank you for being here today. And thank you, too, for your sister Doris as well, who could not be with us. And John, thank you for your military service. Your family sacrificed so much for our country. I know that no award can ever make up for the loss of your father, for not having him there as you grew up. But I hope today that you take some pride and comfort in knowing his valor is finally receiving the full recognition it has always deserved. January 31, 1968, it was an opening assault that would come to be known as the Tet Offensive, a particularly bloody period of the Vietnam War. North Vietnamese forces launched an attack on a strategically located air base near Saigon. The first American unit called to respond was that of Specialist 5 Dwight Birdwell. Unknown to approximately 100 men in C Troop, they were moving to be taken on a full regiment of Viet Cong, likely to be more than 1,000 strong. They arrived, the troop engaged the Viet Cong forces. Specialist Birdwell's unit took the main brunt of the attack, with many tanks and vehicles disabled. When his tank commander was hit and gravely wounded, Specialist Birdwell got him to a place of safety and then took command. He knew his vehicle was on the first line of defense, so Birdwell stood in his commander's hatch at times, half exposed, at times standing entirely out of the tank, fully exposed, laying down suppressive fire on the enemy. He used the tank's cannon. He used the tank's machine gun. He used his personal rifle. He sustained fire, drove back the attackers, and created a place of relative safety for injured men behind the tank to take cover. He provided battlefield updates to his commanders until the enemy shot the communication system right off of his helmet. When he ran out of ammunition, he ran to retrieve an M60 machine gun and ammo off the helicopter that had been downed in a flight to keep firing on the enemy. And even when that M60 was hit by enemy fire, causing it to explode and send shrapnel into Birdwell's face, chest, arms, and hands, he remained on the battlefield. When he was ordered to load onto the medevac helicopter, he complied. This I find amazing, only to crawl right back off the other side and to keep on fighting. That's what you call taking orders and causing trouble. God love you. Only after reinforcements arrived and only after he helped treat the evacuees, his fellow wounded, did Specialist Birdwell agree to evacuate himself. At the time, Birdwell received a Silver Star for his outstanding heroism on the battlefield. It took decades for his commanding officer, then General Glenn Otis, to realize Birdwell had not received the full honor he had earned. But in retirement, General Otis made sure to correct the record and fully document Birdwell's actions to make this day possible. A member of the Cherokee Nation, Birdwell credits the Cherokee veterans who came before him and encouraged him to serve when he called. And I might note, Native American communities, a larger percentage, serve in the United States Armed Forces at a higher percentage rate than any other cohort in America. After leaving the Army, Birdwell continued to build a legacy of service in his community in Oklahoma. He started his own law firm, served for 12 years on the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court, and he passed that legacy of service down to his daughter, Stephanie Birdwell, who's with him today, and who serves as the director of the Office of Tribal Relations at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Specialist 5 Birdwell, thank you. Thank you, thank you. And to your wife, Virginia, who I know wishes she could be here with you today, give her our love as well. I'm grateful for all that you've given to our country, and that at long last, your story is being honored as it should have been always. February 18, 1971, Specialist 5 Dennis Fuji, who was serving as a second tour in Vietnam as a crew chief on a helicopter ambulance, conducting a rescue operation in Laos. They were there to evacuate wounded Allied Vietnamese military personnel. But as their chopper attempted to land, it became the target, sustaining heavy damage that caused them to crash land in the middle of the conflict. When a second American helicopter managed to land nearby minutes later, it was able to evacuate all the downed crewmen except the Specialist Fuji. Rather than risk the lives of his crewmates, Specialist Fuji waved off the helicopter, told them to depart, remaining behind as the only American on the battlefield. Several attempts were made to rescue him before Specialist Fuji could find a radio and call off further attempts. It was too dangerous, he said. He stayed behind, ignoring his own wounds, while helping tend the wounded Vietnamese allies on the field. The next night, the enemy force renewed their assault on the Allied lines with heavy artillery. For more than 17 consecutive hours, Specialist Fuji called in American gunships to help repel the attack. He repeatedly exposed himself to hostile fire in order to better observe enemy positions and direct airstrikes against them. On the radio, his fellow Americans knew him as Papa Whiskey, clear-eyed, level-headed soldier, directing airstrikes so precisely they were able to drive back the forces that had come within 15 to 20 meters of a friendly camp. When an American helicopter was finally able to retrieve him, wounded and severely fatigued, 2 days after his air ambulance had crashed, he made it only about 4 kilometers before it crash landed. Specialist Fuji had to wait 2 more days for another South Vietnamese base before he was able to leave the area and receive the medical assistance for his wounds. Speaking to the press shortly after his experience, Specialist Fuji downplayed his own contributions and honored the skills of the Allied Vietnamese troops he fought with, simply saying, I quote, "I like my job. I like to help other people who need help out there." It's amazing. Today, Specialist 5 Fuji, we remember and we celebrate just how many people you helped. I want to thank you and your wife, Ray, who couldn't be here with you today, and your brother, Edwin, for all your family has done for this nation. We will forever honor your commitment to your crew, your allies, and to your country. April 14, 1972, the Battle of Fire Support Base Charlie. A lone American on the base, serving as a senior advisor to the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, was Major John Duffy. They called him Dusty Cyanide. That was his call name. In those days, leading up to April 14th, the battalion command post had been destroyed. Major Duffy had already been twice wounded, refusing evacuation. Efforts to resupply the base had failed, and FSB Charlie was surrounded by the battalion-sized element. For hours, American gunships guided by Dusty Cyanide took airstrikes on enemy positions. Major Duffy repeatedly exposed himself to danger in order to direct the gunship's fire and keep the battalion from being overrun. He even called in one strike, extreme danger close, to his own position in order to drive back an advancing attack. And when he was wounded again, he again refused evacuation. He worked side by side to organize the defense of the base with the Vietnamese commander, Major Miley, who was here today. Major, where are you? Major, thank you for being here. Thank you for your service. It's an honor to have you here. When they finally had to abandon the base, Major Duffy volunteered to lead the rear squad and cover their retreat. And when the withdrawing soldiers were ambushed early on April 15th and many of the injured troops scattered, Major Duffy remained with those who were wounded, rallying them to make it to an established evacuation zone despite being constantly pursued by the Viet Cong. Upon reaching the exfiltration site, Major Duffy again made sure he was the last to board the helicopter. And finally, the airship was ready to depart. One of his Vietnamese allies was shot in the foot, causing him to fall backwards out of the helicopter. But Major Duffy caught him and dragged him back in on board with him, saving one more life along the way. Major Duffy served in the Army until 1977, completing 3 tours in Vietnam, numerous Special Forces assignments, and 20 years of faithful service to our country. After which he went on to a successful career as an author and was even nominated for a Pulitzer Prize for poetry. He is the definition of a warrior poet, enduring devotion to those he served with and those who serve our nation still. Thank you, Major Duffy, for all that you've inspired in others. And as Commander-in-Chief, I know this is not only for those who wear the uniform of our nation who serve, it's your families as well. So, Mary, thank you for all that you sacrificed over the years as well. To Marcus and Judd, I want to emphasize what you already know. Your grandpa's a hero, flat out, unadulterated hero. We're able to take these actions today to upgrade the awards and properly honor the duty and devotion of those soldiers. Thanks to individual dedication of those who serve with them. And because of a congressionally ordered review of the heroic action of Asian Americans, Native Americans, and Pacific Islanders awarded the Distinguished Service Cross during the Korean and Vietnam Wars, to make sure we properly honor the contributions of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders and their service they've made over the years. We did a similar review of World War II era awards. The result in 22 Medal of Honors being awarded Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islander service members who had previously been under-recognized, including a very close friend of mine, one of my closest friends and benefactors in the United States Senate, Danny Inouye, United States Senator. So I want to also thank the members of Congress who helped make this possible and ensure that the United States lives up to our promises, that for those who give their best for our country, we'll always, always give our best to you. I also want to take a moment to recognize 3 other Medal of Honor recipients awarded for their heroic actions in Vietnam who are with us today. Walter Morin. Walter, where are you? There you go, Stint. Walter. Thank you. James McLuhan. And Brian Thacker. Thank you for being here to help us recognize these newest honorees. And I want to also note that last week we lost a giant in this community. Herschel Woody Williams passed away at the age of 98, the last Medal of Honor recipient of World War II. Honored by President Harry Truman for his valor during the Battle of Iwo Jima, Woody Williams will soon lie in honor in the United States Capitol. And his passing is a reminder of what so many Americans of our greatest generation sacrificed to preserve liberty, democracy, and for our nation and for the world. Now it's my great honor to ask for the citations to be read as we award the Medal of Honors to the late Staff Sergeant Edward N. Kaneshiro, Specialist 5 Dwight D. Birdwell, Specialist 5 Dennis M. Fuji, Major John J. Duffy. Thank you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. For my staff,
We have been watching President Biden deliver remarks before he awards the Medal of Honor to 4 Vietnam War veterans. The president said time has not diminished their bravery and acts of valor during the war.